to overcome it. He had that indomitable spirit that refused to give up.
But knowing the odds of surviving pancreatic cancer using standard treatments are low, Patrick signs up for clinical trials.
Patrick really wanted to be a groundbreaker. He was interested in breaking new territory, finding new treatments, and proving the textbooks wrong. He wanted to be the exception.
February 2008, Stanford University Medical Center, California. The center is known for its cutting-edge treatment of cancer, employing some of the top surgeons in the world. And so Patrick begins his potentially life-saving clinical trials. I can see from the who were backing up Ventolin with the established chemotherapy.
Patrick's enthusiasm for exploring options never waned. So he expressed interest in trying herbal preparations, Eastern medicine, as a complement to what we were doing.
Patrick's use of alternative therapies may have helped him psychologically battle his cancer. There are other. Patrick is also eating organic fruits and vegetables and consuming regular vitamin-boosting smoothies.
Patrick seemed to be able to control his diet in a way that made him feel well and continued to support him during his treatment. Patrick always wanted us to learn more and to think outside the box.
The supplements and smoothies bolster the immune system and more. 2008, Stanford University Medical Center, California. Patrick had only been given weeks to live, but yet 2 months after he began the Ventolin drug trial, he and Lisa were back at the hospital for the results. Amazing that months after his diagnosis, Chicago, Illinois, a year before his death, Patrick starts filming a 13-part TV series called The Beast.
In America, and especially Hollywood, they love a comeback. And Patrick certainly was coming.
They had a lot of fight scenes and a lot of physicality, and Patrick refused to let anybody do his work for him. If the stunt coordinator or director insisted upon it, he would get pretty angry.
Even if you would say it's not a good idea for you to be jumping over 3 moving cars, he really took on a role, really embodied the role, and really wanted to do it all.
He was working 5 days a week, 14 to 16 hours a day, getting chemo on the weekends, and as we say in Texas, he was kicking ass and taking names.
How you feeling? Health's good? Yeah. I'm a miracle, dude. Yeah? I don't know why.
But Patrick's doctors were worried he was pushing himself too hard.
I know that he was going to the very best doctors, and they were telling him to quit. Don't do the series, because you're never going to have the stamina to do that. And that obviously didn't happen.
I was concerned about Patrick's well-being. He pushed to no limit. He had no internal clock that said stop.
Psychologists talk about the sick role, that he can't work or you got to be quiet around your. He rejected the sick role completely. He decided that this is not going to faze me. I'm going to continue leading my life. And there was a real sense that, I may have an illness, but I am not sick. This is not who I am.
One thing I find extraordinary from Patrick's notes is...
I asked him, I said, why aren't you taking painkillers? He said, I'm not taking painkillers. I want to know where I'm at, what I'm doing, and why I'm doing it. I'm never giving up.
I think part of it was, again, that grit, that toughness that he had. He was this, strong Texan man that, that could do this, that didn't need help.
But behind the scenes, Roy discovers that Patrick isn't coping quite as well as he seems to be.
I went out to the trailer to find Patrick. I went in and he was just curled up and in enormous pain and covered in his own body fluids. I said, buddy, I'm sorry, is there anything I can do? And he said, just hold my hand. I was there sitting there and watching him go through all this pain, and I thought, I'm just a friend. What is this doing to Lisa? And what is this doing to Patrick? Because his ego would not allow himself to this indignation.
I can still wonder.
He looked very, very ill, and I was standing next to John, and I turned to him, and he looked at me, and he just shook his head. And I said, I don't think he's going to make it through the day. But there was an energy that sparked that allowed him to become Patrick Swayze.
However, Dr. Hunter had January 9th, 2009, Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, Los Angeles, 9 months before his death. Patrick has finally finished filming The Beast, and he's feeling run down. A trip to the hospital confirms he has pneumonia. Cancer patients are... Despite the severity of the situation, Patrick makes a miraculous recovery. Patrick was fortunate
Discipline of a dancer because of his mother and because of his upbringing. He just refused to give up.
February 2009, Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, Los Angeles. Despite all Patrick's efforts to beat the cancer, he's developed a resistance to the drugs he's currently taking, and the tumors are continuing to spread. Running out of treatment options, Dr. Hoffman takes the risky decision to try a radically new combination, mixing the chemotherapy drug Abraxane with the Gemzar Patrick's already taking.
Patrick was the first person that we treated with that combination outside of the context of a clinical trial. And there was a lot of skepticism and a lot of debate behind the scenes.
Abraxane was April 2009, Patrick and Lisa's ranch, California. Since the diagnosis, Patrick has been trying to live as normal a life as possible, including taking long walks with his horses.
I think that Patrick's decision to go back to his ranch and to deal with his dogs and his horses was really an attempt to not give in to this disease that he had. He wanted to be Patrick Swayze. He wanted to live a normal life, because the minute you back away from that is the minute you say, I'm done.
He continued to love dancing with his wife. Patrick's brother Donnie is also around to help Patrick and Lisa out. Taking the chemo drug Abraxane commonly leads to hair loss, so they all take the decision to cut it off with horse clippers.
Patrick was always afraid to get to the point where he had to lose his hair.
What he tried very hard to do was to constantly be seen as Patrick Swayze and not like this cancer patient. And so when he ends up losing his hair because of the chemo, it sort of had a profound effect on him.
I can see from Patrick's notes that soon lost his hair, and despite trying to disguise himself with a wig, Patrick's deterioration didn't escape the notice of the media.
When the pictures emerged of Patrick looking at his worst, with hair loss and, with a hat on trying to cover things up, and it was so devastating.
This is difficult for anybody going through chemo. But when you're a famous person and there is a paparazzi just waiting to get that snap of you looking frail, not looking like yourself, then it makes it so much harder.
It had become difficult for me to see Patrick because he'd become skeletal. It was just too difficult to see this incredibly courageous, powerful person disappearing in front of my eyes.